And there you go. Recording?
Yep.
Good morning, or good, almost noon. Yeah, have a good lunchtime. Welcome to the April meeting. I think it's April. Doesn't look like it outside, but it is April in Minnesota. And today our presentation will be on Bluetooth, given by Mike Griffin and myself, Jim Homan. The agenda will cover some club information first before we get on to the presentation itself. Upcoming future meetings. Note that the days change. It'll be Thursday next month, still in this room, and Tom will be talking about a slide scanner that he has fairly recently purchased and how that's worked, a negative and slide scanner. And then in June, it'll be on a Friday, that's in the summer, but please come and listen to Paul. We'll be talking about electronic payments. And along those lines, is there anyone that uses Venmo? Can you raise your hand? Is there anyone that uses Venmo? There you go. So that's for Paul's benefit. That will tie into what he talks about in June. The upcoming MACSIG meetings, those are still on Fridays here, not yet onto the summer schedule. Those in the 201 auditorium, one next week, or 2 weeks from now, is it? And then on May 5th. It is next week, yeah, time flies. Tax day. Actually, you got an extension on your taxes till the end of the day today because IRS had trouble with their computers. Our club officers, Linda Brown is our vice president, Paul Ebert, our membership secretary, Mike Griffin, treasurer, MACSIG, and Bluetooth speaker about Bluetooth. Stan Miller, secretary, and sandwich czar. And I'll let Stan, if you want to say thanks to all those who helped with getting this all ready. Jim Beardsley, Bonnie, and Paul Ebert with the drinks. Andrew, so thanks everyone there. And it looks like even after everybody's gone through the line, there's still something left there for seconds for those who need to do that. Andrew Petrucci is our communications coordinator. I don't see Andrew. Tom Kreutzer, director at large, and I'm Jim Homan. If you have dues, you can pay those to Paul Ebert. There's a variety of methods now and more coming. So electronic payments of different sorts are now accepted, and Paul will be describing some of the background for all of that in the June meeting. And if you're changing your emails, please make sure to notify Paul because that is how the club keeps in touch with all of the members. If you have any suggestions for topics, email them, talk to any of the board members, and you could volunteer to present. I didn't know a ton about Bluetooth. I just knew I used it, so we did some research, learned about it, and now that's what we will be sharing with you today. So you could volunteer to present on a topic, or you could write a short or long article for the eBytes newsletter, and we can share it that way as well. The website has the past meeting slides, handouts. There is a handout for this one. I didn't get around to printing it, so it will be out on the website as well. The past meeting recordings, the deals section, the eBytes newsletter, and that's given right there. It's also on past handouts. You should know where it is. It's in all the emails as well. And the April eBytes, if I pulled up the right information here, is that right? Or did I?
Yeah, that's right.
So those are some of the things you can find in the April eBytes. So any questions about the club operations? If not, we'll get into the discussion on Bluetooth. I'll give a little bit of an introduction. I'm going to go pretty fast through the technology because that can be kind of dry and it's a little bit harder to demo. And then Mike will be talking about security, some of the uses, and what we can expect in the future. And if you've got anything to share, please let us know and participate as well. So what is Bluetooth? It is a wireless technology that's a standard for exchanging data, but it's for relatively short distances. It replaces cables, so it's a wireless way to do it, and so what that allows you to do is have conversation via wireless headset, for example, use a wireless mouse or wireless keyboard, so you don't have to be tethered to your actual computer. It lets you synchronize information from a mobile phone or an iPad or an iPod to your PC. You can download photos from Bluetooth-enabled cameras to your PC, whether that's your phone or a camera itself. Allows you to go hands-free when you're using your phone in your car. Send music to a portable speaker. That's what I was doing a little bit ahead of time. You heard High Pulp. That's a band that my son is in out in Seattle. That's what I was playing here a little bit before that. And much, much more. As a brief history, this technology started at Ericsson Mobile for cell phones, and their intent was to create wireless headsets. The first commercial devices that use this technology were those wireless headsets, came out in about the mid-90s, although it wasn't really called Bluetooth at that time. And you may be wondering, where does the name Bluetooth come from? It comes from King Harold Bluetooth. Sounds like a pirate name, but that was his name. And he united the Danish tribes to a single kingdom. And so the implication is that Bluetooth unites all these communication protocols into one standard. Before that, you might have been able to have a wireless headset, like some of those, even those earlier devices, but it would only work if you had the right software on the sending device, and with that wireless headset, you couldn't pair it up with something else that didn't have that specific software and hardware even. The logo for Bluetooth that we see down in the bottom right-hand corner here is from the runes for Harold Bluetooth's name. So that Hagal and Bjarken, and sorry, I don't speak Danish. I don't know if I'm pronouncing those right at all, but those were Harold's initials, and you can see how they fused together into the Bluetooth logo. IEEE did standardize the original Bluetooth specification. I think that was at level 1.1 that it was standardized as that IEEE spec, but it's no longer maintained by the IEEE. Instead, there's a Bluetooth special interest group that oversees the ongoing development of that specification, so the qualification program for Bluetooth devices. In order to use that Bluetooth logo and call yourself a Bluetooth device, you have to meet some requirements, and protects all the trademarks. You do see there's a registered trademark. And the actual Bluetooth SIG was formed in 1998. So now some of the basics. Bluetooth operates in the 2.4 gigahertz range, the ISM band, industrial, scientific, and medical devices. It's the same range of frequencies that's used by microwaves, by your Wi-Fi networks, and a whole host of other devices that I show up there. Cordless phones, baby monitors, microphones, garage door openers. All of these are being used in this unlicensed, which that doesn't mean it's not regulated. They have to meet requirements about the power that they can emit, etc., but it is unlicensed, so you don't have, like radio stations have to license the frequencies they use. To operate in this area, you don't need a license, you just need to meet the regulations. So, and it is apart from the radio, television, and the frequencies that cell phones use. In order to do that, Bluetooth uses a technology called frequency hopping spread spectrum. The data is divided up into packets, and then the packets are sent out on each of one of the 79 designated channels if they're using the basic rate or enhanced data rate. So that's spread out over 1 megahertz range for each channel. And it's a way you can think of it is, imagine you're talking on a walkie-talkie and you're getting a lot of interference from people. So the person you're talking to, you say, hey, let's switch over to a different channel. You switch to that other channel, there's less interference, and now you got clear communication. What this frequency hopping spread spectrum technology does is you agree on a protocol where you jump between those channels very quickly, 800 hops per second, using this frequency hopping, the adaptive frequency hopping. So both the master device and the slave device, these two paired devices agree how we're going to jump around between those frequencies. So even if you do hit one that's got some interference, it only lasts for a very small fraction of a second, and then you move on to the next frequency, and then they have correction procedures in the protocol too, so that you get a trustworthy, or a reliable, I should say, connection then between the two devices. A newer development in Bluetooth is what they call low energy, and in order to do that, it uses a little bit broader spacing between those channels. So 2 megahertz is the spacing, and that ends up then with 40 different channels that they use across that same spread. So if you have one device using this low energy protocol, the other one using the enhanced data rate, they're not talking to each other. They have to be using the same protocol. But by doing this broader spread, they can use lower energy, and as we'll see, that there's some other things that come along with that. I know this is a lot of text, but devices then, the way they do this, the modulation is through a couple different setups. The reason that's important is, all right, this original Gaussian frequency shift keying modulation allows the devices, Bluetooth devices in the basic rate mode to communicate at up to 1 megabit per second. Further development, so this is what the Bluetooth, the later standards, as they updated that specification, they came up with different modulation schemes. I won't even try to pronounce those, and those are the acronyms, but each of them then give 2 megabits or 3 megabits per second, respectively. So you get higher data transfer rates. So that's the enhanced data rate mode. It lets you transfer files more quickly. None of this really, though, is to the kind of speed where you're going to be streaming video. So that's something to keep in mind. You can get good streaming audio, but you're not going to get to the point where you're streaming video. Those two are combined into what they call the basic rate, enhanced data rate radio. And those are in a combined protocol. So Bluetooth devices now will be able to operate in both of those modes. They are backwards compatible to older devices, so it will be able to do that. But then a different, the Bluetooth low energy radio uses also that GFSK modulation, but again, that is separate. If you're using low energy, it has to be talking to another one that's using that same modulation. And that can now go up to 2 megabits per second. So what's the range? We talked about that a little bit. They'll have class 3 radios, and Mike will cover this a little bit more too, but they'll have a range up to about 1 meter. So what good is that? That's the kind of thing that maybe your Fitbit would use to connect to your computer. And it might even, so you might be using that low energy radio, so you don't have to have a massive battery in your Fitbit. It might be a better workout lugging that around, but you'd be working on charging it all the time, right? So that's why you'll have that class 3 radios. Class 2 radios are the ones that are most commonly found, say in your cell phones or in a camera, etc. And those will work up to about 10 meters or 33 feet. So I was back at the table getting a sandwich and still sending the music from the iPod in my pocket up to the speaker here in the front of the room, and that was working just fine. And then class 1, that's primarily been developed for industrial use cases, can go up to about 100 meters. And as with always, many of these sort of things, your results may vary. The actual range that you get depends on the quality of the devices, how well charged their batteries are maybe, so how strong or reliable is the actual signal that they're sending out, what's between you and so that two devices that are talking to each other, and other factors. So that covers that. So what are the types of connections that you can make? Point to point, and that's a topology, as they call it. It's used for one-to-one device connections. And with the BR, EDR, it's what's commonly then used for streaming with devices such as speakers. And a little bit later, as we have time, I'll demonstrate how it is one-to-one. So I was sending music to the speaker from my cell phone, and then I start up my iPod and I pair it up and it kicks my cell phone off and the iPod takes over. So it's only one device. I can't have two devices talking to the speaker at the same time.
Jim.
Yes.
Questions running through my mind at this point. I'm not here yet, but I'm just imagining how overwhelming this is going to be to understand it.
So, yeah.
So now that compact discs and players are effectively being eliminated from your vehicles, Bluetooth now is a connection potential, but then do I have to get my CD music onto an iPod or what to get it to connect ultimately with Bluetooth?
So the question here was, as we see CD players being replaced and eliminated, right? So then you're going to want to connect to some device to play that music with a Bluetooth. Do you need to get your music onto an iPod or something that then can send that Bluetooth signal? And the short answer is yes. I suppose if you have a CD player that you can give Bluetooth capability to devices. If you can put in a USB, there are USB devices. There probably are CD players that will broadcast Bluetooth, but something would need to do that Bluetooth. I see Jim Beardsley first wants to chime in.
It depends on your vehicle.
Oh, yeah, there's always an... It depends
on your car. I can play a USB CD player through my car stereo system because of the way it's connected.
Yeah.
Bluetooth, I can do a USB drive or a CD player.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, so I was assuming the question meant that your player you only had the Bluetooth connection, but yeah, I mean, if there's a variety of ways that you can connect, most cars now still have an auxiliary input, so you can actually have a cable straight from whatever player it is to that.
I want to continue to utilize my CDs. I just get a player now that can plug into
No, you have to have, first your car has to be compatible.
In what way? Through YouTube?
No.
Yeah,
you have to be able to take a USB connection from the CD player or flash drive into your system, your car system, to play. If it doesn't do that, then you have to either do Bluetooth or your screw.
Okay.
Or there's still radio transmitters even too, right? So there's another comment.
One, you can also get devices that will plug into a audio jack, an 8-inch headphone jack that will send it out via Bluetooth. So if you don't have Bluetooth in your CD player, you can still send it out. However, it's one-to-one, so if you've got your phone paired to your car to be able to have hands-free calling, you probably can't pair it to your CD player at the same time and have them both work.
Right. So just to echo that comment again, there are devices that you can get to plug into an audio jack that will then transmit the Bluetooth signal to another receiving device to be the speaker. But to remember that those typically are using this one-to-one topology that I just described, so that you cannot use a CD player at the same time that you would be using a your phone with your car. It'll be one or the other at a time. One more comment.
One more comment on if you have CDs, it's probably time to get rid of them. And this goes back 5 years ago, I think or even longer. We showed how to digitize them. So you can take your CD and you can turn it into an MP3 file. You can store that on your phone. You can store it up on the cloud. And then if you have your Bluetooth connection, you can play them from your phone, from the cloud.
Or you can put it on a flash drive and plug your flash drive in.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Digitize your music, well, should say rip your music, CDs are already digital, but we have shown how to get it to an
Send me
MP3.
an email and I can give it.
One more comment.
You can resell your CDs back at the local used bookstore for how much?
Depends on what it is. Yeah.
And no matter what you do in your car, consider it distracted driving.
We're going to move on. Or what?
You can also donate CDs to the public library.
Yeah.
And use it as a tax deduction.
So you can donate, you can sell your CDs, or you can actually donate your CDs to your library and get a tax deduction.
$5 per CD.
So good discussion. We'll get through the technology stuff and we can get back to some of that kind of discussion as well. There are some other topologies, of course. Broadcast topology is used for one-to-many device communications, and that's something that's used, for example, retail point of interest information, indoor navigation and wayfinding, maybe finding your way around an airport, or if you're going around a museum, it can give you information about where you are in that museum and do it that way. And it also can be used for item and asset tracking. You can tell where something is. And finally, the last topology is many-to-many device. And with Bluetooth Low Energy, that's something that's used for control monitoring of automation systems where you might have tens to thousands of devices that you want to have communicating. And that could be in building automation, such as controlling the lighting or heating or cooling or security throughout a building. You can do that using this topology. Sensor networks, that might be something that's used in a factory. Or again, asset tracking. If you want to know where certain pieces of equipment are in that factory, then that can use this many-to-many topology. So with connecting, maybe I'll ask it this way, who hasn't used Bluetooth? Okay, there's a couple. Because if I asked it the other way around, I wouldn't be able to see. And I'll show it, yeah, well, that's fine. So there's just a couple people that haven't. But what happens is, for example, right now I've got that speaker up here is a Bluetooth speaker, and it's transmitting right now saying, hey, I'm here. I am, if anyone looks with their Bluetooth, they would see that it's an HK Onyx Studio 3. I think that's the way the name it's giving, and it'll tell us what kind of device it is, the services that it would provide. It's, that might be, I can give you the blood pressure of the patient that I'm on, or those kind of things, right? I'm not sure exactly even what the speaker would be transmitting as its services. And then technical information, including the Bluetooth specification that it's being used, and information about how they would connect. Then another device, so it does that, and then if I use my phone or my iPod, then I can see that information, request to connect, and then the two devices will do this ad hoc pairing and create this network called a personal area network, or a PicoNet. In that case, it'd be a one-to-one connection, but it can be up to 7 devices in one of these PicoNets. So it's an ad hoc computer network that's created right there when they just go through that connection. And it's a question.
A little bit off the topic, but I'm wondering if you might know what kind of connection they have for the Olympics when they have those drones all performing together.
That's a good question. I don't know. The question is, what kind of connection do they have to control all the drones that were flying at the Olympics?
Wasn't
It was Wi-Fi, and that makes sense that it would be Wi-Fi because of the distance and the fact that it was so many devices. It makes sense that those were Wi-Fi connections as opposed to a Bluetooth connection. There would have taken quite a bit of power to manage that kind of a connection. The Wi-Fi takes that power as well, but it's already built for that, a lot closer to that type of usage. And better data rates, higher data rates, and right. So that's the end of what I was going to cover. I will, if there's, we can have more discussion too, but otherwise I'll turn it over. These references will be on the website and on the handout that will be on the website as well. And with that, I'll ask Mike to come up. And I'll get to eat.
Okay, I'll start with a quiz. What is this? For any of you that do hobby work with microcontrollers, it's a microcontroller. It's a Bluetooth antenna and transmitter. It's got audio I/O. I'll pass this around just to let you know how tiny things have gotten. I do want it back though.
You have asset tracking?
Yes, I do. So I'm going to pick up where Jim left off about security. And you'll notice the last thing he talked about was a mesh network where you could have many Bluetooth devices talking to each other. And one of the first things about security is if it's difficult to reach, then it's going to be hard to hack. So is adding a network of these things together a good idea or a bad idea? We'll see. But we have to first realize that Bluetooth is doing what it was intended to do. You've got a couple of types of communications. One is a bus, and the other is a network. It's important to know the distinctions between the two to understand why Bluetooth does or doesn't do what it does. The range typically for a bus is short. You're connecting a printer to your computer. You're connecting a mouse to a keyboard. There are reasons why networks need to be long. You want to talk to your bank and you're at home in a blizzard. So that's one difference. The other piece I didn't really show here is there's a protocol stack. So the connection is the bottom end of this stack, but there's a lot of software between that and your screen to make it work. And so the complexity for a bus is meant to be very low. Keep it simple. The complexity for a network is fairly high. And then level of trust, and by this I mean if it gets a request to use the services, does it say, okay, I'm fine with this, or does it say, who do you think you are, give me your firstborn, give me all of this information. So with a network, the level of trust is much lower than a bus because it's intended for a lot of connections from all over the place. And then latency, this is a fancy word for how long does it take from when you set up the data to getting it actually shipped on the information network. And if you're doing something like audio, you really don't want a lot of delay. You don't want something saying, wait a minute, somebody else is calling in. I will stop playing your music until I get the information. So the latency is good for audio things. It's good for phone calls. But for a network, it might not work so well. So there are trade-offs, but basically there's a high level of trust with Bluetooth and low latency, and so some of the applications you see are optimized around those sorts of developments. One of the coolest applications I've seen for Bluetooth is, I know somebody in 220 that has hearing aids. And they talk through their phone to set the equalization, to attenuate the sound, to go to setting number 3, which is a noisy room, as opposed to setting number 1, which is a concert hall. And anytime they upgrade the app, the hearing aids are improved. So you can do some pretty powerful things you couldn't do 10 years ago. It's actually a nice thing, but that's one of the applications we did not cover, but it's out there. So back to range. If somebody is not at or near your house, it's going to be hard to break into your Bluetooth network. As Jim said, most of the Bluetooth networks we use are limited to 33 feet. If you've got walls and glass between you and the device receiving your signal or the device sending your signal, that could be 20 feet or 25 feet. So as you said, your mileage may be different. Pairing is also important. If you're not paired to the device, you're not going to talk to it. Some devices like speakers, they really don't have anybody there defending them, so they will basically accept the signal that says, I want to pair to you. But if you have your iPhone next to somebody else's iPhone or your Android next to somebody else's Android, and you're doing like photo sharing, they have to say, yes, I will accept this request from that other phone before they send the data. So the pairing can require some sort of authentication before you actually get a connection, and you can just deny them. The authentication itself is pretty simple, but it can be more complex, like in an industrial setting. But it's there, and we can talk about encryption in a minute, but that's another aspect to Bluetooth. So there's a 128-bit long key, as they call it, that is used with Bluetooth. Not all data has to be encrypted. I doubt the signal to your speaker is encrypted, because you always have to de-encrypt it to make it useful. But the thing about this is there have been two methods up to Rev 2. There was a legacy method, which was simpler, and then from versions 2 up to version 5, which is what they're now rolling out, it's a more complex method called ideally the newer method is called the Secure Simple Protocol. But what's important is the sending device and the receiving device, they need to know what this encryption key is, because it's never transmitted across the link. So the devices have to say, we'll be compatible with these devices because we know what this is, and then everybody that uses this has a different 128-bit key. So basically, anybody who's trying to sniff out your connection, if you're using it as a poor man's network, they either have to be at one of the devices using it, or they have to be the one generating the key, which means it's got to be somebody else who's very close to your system. So this helps. Can things be hacked? Probably. But somebody would have to spend a lot of effort to come to my neighborhood, get within 20, 30 feet of my house, and then sit there and try to break in when he might look a little suspicious sitting on my lawn. So it can happen, but because of the range, the probability is low in general. And so this is the basic way that they protect Bluetooth. We talked about uses quite a bit, so I won't spend a lot of time on this list. But in addition to the hearing aids, there's a lot of other things happening in the medical field. And I have a brother who is a doctor in Oklahoma. And so he saw on the web that 3M had a stethoscope that was a Bluetooth stethoscope. And that was a good part, and he wanted to buy it. The bad part was nowhere on our website did it tell him how to purchase it. So actually, our employee store has them, and they ship anywhere. That's how he did it. But what's interesting about this is I never thought of this before. So he can now amplify the heart sounds or the breath sounds and all of that. But the other piece I didn't realize is there is no record of any probing that your doctor does with the stethoscope until you get to Bluetooth, where you can stream the waveform to your laptop and save it and store it and compare it to 6 months ago or whatever. But 3M makes them. I don't know how many other people make them, but it seems like a good idea. Internet of Things. Does anybody know what that means? IoT. It's a fancy way of saying that microcontrollers have gotten cheaper, hence the thing I'm hopefully shipping around to the group. And thanks, Sue. As a result, you can have almost anything talk to anything else and send data back and forth. I have a washing machine. When it has a error or a hiccup, I can put my phone next to it, and don't tell anybody. Technically, that's near-field communications, but there are some that do Bluetooth that send the data then to the manufacturer through your phone. But anything that you can imagine can now have a little chip in it with the antenna. And there are these tiny in-ear headphones that Apple makes and a few others make, and they just have a little stem sticking down. They are Bluetooth headphones, battery, antenna, everything. You can control it from your phone, but they're Bluetooth. And it's absolutely amazing. So the Internet of Things is taking advantage of that. They're also taking advantage of the fact that the Internet protocol, what they call the IP, they changed their version to version IPv6, as they call it, probably, 5-6 years ago, Jim. And a lot of newer systems are using that instead of the older one. What's important about that is you can have a billion IP addresses that are distinct and separate because of the new protocol. So now this is why everybody on Earth has drones and anything that TITAC is connectable through the internet, through Wi-Fi, through Bluetooth. And as a result, a lot of the development going into Bluetooth is around lower power, higher speeds, so they can latch onto this Internet of Things bandwagon. So it's not just industrial, it's a lot of things in your home, windows, your door locks, light bulbs. In fact, I forget who the manufacturer is, but there's a $27 light bulb that has just been announced. It's an LED bulb, and it is Bluetooth controllable for the brightness, and it has a speaker inside. Okay? Somebody's having way too much fun. In-store beacons. Jim was talking a bit about this, but this is where a store like Target will have Bluetooth beacons, so when you get to a certain part of the store, it says the bedding is here, and it gives you a map. Or it shows you picked up some things from over here and here and here. If you're trying to find your way back, we'll show you. Or probably at some point, wasn't it one of the Google experiments where you walk down the aisles, you take your item, throw it in the cart, and it starts totaling for you? So these in-store beacons it's kind of like a GPS for buildings. I wish they would do one of those for Building 201, if anybody has ever worked over there. And then robots. At Christmas time, I got an R2D2. It's about 7 inches tall, and it's driven by Bluetooth, and I can draw a pattern on my phone screen, and the robot follows the pattern. I can make it rock its shoulders, it can retract the foot, the head can turn, the light turns on, and I don't know exactly why one needs this. But the point is that this is a subset of what they can do with industrial robots, with robots that are like helpers for seniors, things like that. So there's a big growing area, and the connectivity of Bluetooth and the fact that you don't want too much latency in there. It's like you say you're going to break the window stop, you want it to stop now. These are just some of the applications that Jim hasn't covered yet, but it's all part of this whole universe, if you will. And so, a lot of these applications, I think we're doing okay time-wise, but we've got on the left sneakers and speakers, and on the right we have the car, and we have guitar amplifiers. What on earth does a guitar amplifier need with Bluetooth? They have modeling amplifiers now that take the models from Fender amps and Ampeg amps and all of these others, and they put it in software in the amplifier itself, and you can download then other versions and other people's settings, and the hook they've got is this guitarist, this famous guitarist, used these settings last night in this concert in New Jersey. Oh, gotta get it, So, does anybody have like a tablet with a pencil connected, smart pencil? Most of those are Bluetooth connected these days. Used to be you had a cord, and from a natural feel, if you're doing art, cord doesn't get it. Now it's not an issue. You unplug what would be the eraser on the pencil, and you plug it into a USB port to charge it up again, but they're using Bluetooth. There's the stethoscope we talked about, and I just thought about it. When I'm in my office, I'm running 4 Bluetooth devices without even thinking. I've got my phone. My phone talks to the watch. I've got the laptop, and then I have a wireless mouse I use from time to time, and that's also Bluetooth. But if I want to, I have an LED lamp whose base is a Bluetooth speaker. So then I can play through that. So there's technically 5. But that's how pervasive it is. And
The sneaker doing fitness sort of track?
right, so the sneaker is actually a Bluetooth transmitter in your sneaker. There's a couple of them that use a piezoelectric pad to actually generate some electricity to charge the Bluetooth speaker, not speaker, but the Bluetooth transmitter that then talks to your Fitbit or your phone. And so it's something for running shoes for runners. Yes?
I accidentally discovered that if you want to connect with a network but you don't know the password, if somebody has an iPhone that has you in their directory, you bring your phone close to theirs, it transmits the network password to your phone to access it. What's the connection between the 2 phones?
Well, your Bluetooth is probably the connection, because through the cellular network, they've got to have your information. Now, for the Bluetooth, it's your option, but you should always have it set so that it says, I want authentication. And that's the piece where they've actually designed it so you can send like photos, walk up to somebody and say, here, I'll send you these photos. But you can turn that off and say, I'll take anybody that sends them.
Is that AirDrop?
That's AirDrop, yes. But you really want to say, I want to be able to accept this before I let somebody connect to my phone. So that's the other piece of it. So you can do that, but it's important to know that one shouldn't always keep that open. And then before we get to future, Bluetooth does take power. So if you're running low on juice on your phone, for example, The first thing that you would do, unless you have to be communicating with some other keyboard or something, is you turn off the Bluetooth, and that'll probably gain you 5-10% of battery life. So, nothing is free. And the Wi-Fi, of course, will take power, but if you're on a cell phone, you do need the cellular connection, otherwise it's an iPod. So the power factor is one of it. Future-wise, Jim covered a lot of the territory of where they're going as far as the networks, but they're pushing lower power for the same capabilities. They're pushing higher speeds. They're talking 2 times. So right now the base rate is 1 megabit per second, and they're trying to go double. Longer range, and this gets into, is this really such a good idea? But the nice thing about these is most of these functions are programmable. So you may be able to say, I just want the closer in range, not the farther range. Like if you have a router in your house, you can choose to try to turn up or turn down the amount of power the router puts out, the wireless router. And so I expect this will be similar. And then mesh networking. And so you're pushing the limits, and is it more hackable and all of this? Don't know. We'll find out, but there are some smart people working on this, so I think that it should probably be okay. It's just going to be that there will always be growing pains. And then beacons, I think we're going to see the Targets and the Walmarts and the Costco's and all go to this, because the stores have gotten so big. If they move anything, you could spend days there. So I think that's going to take off. And then Internet of Things, when you can get a little microcontroller for 50 cents or $1, and then you can add, as they call them in the Arduino world, shields and other things, motor controllers and LEDs flashing and all of that. You're going to have kids in the basement that are doing the Internet of Things, whether they know it or not. So, like Jim, had a few references as well. And any questions?
When you use hotspot, is that using your Bluetooth at the same time? Or is that something different?
That's a good question. So, using your phone as a hotspot, what it's doing is it's taking the cellular signal and converting it into a Wi-Fi signal, like an Ethernet signal for your phone. So usually that is not using the Bluetooth. You could probably find a way to configure it to do so, but 9 times out of 10 it's giving you a Wi-Fi connection for like your laptop if you're in some airport and don't want to pay $12 for a 1-hour connection. That's what that is.
We'll elaborate a little more about security in public spaces and settings.
Sure. So probably more broadly, the security in public spaces is the Wi-Fi connection that most people get in coffee shops and hotels. And what's important there is you're on a shared network with other people, which is no different than at your home. What is different, though, is that on the shared network, other people, if they have equipment, can try to sniff for your ID, your password, your data, all of this. It's important that you do use a password, and inside of your network setup, especially for the Wi-Fi, there's a WPA and a WPA2 encryption. You should have encryption on at all times, and any of the normal routers will know how to decrypt, but the people who are just casual hackers, it's work, and typically most of them are lazy. Most of the software to hack into your system is produced by 1 or 2 smart people, and then you have 3,000 people that just copy it and say, I wonder if. So if it doesn't work, they'll move on to something that's an easier thing to do. but you want to make sure you have encryption on, that you're using a password. You can set a personal firewall anywhere you are. That's built into the operating system, and make it so that anything that's not like these websites I want to go to, or the connection to your home network or whatever, you can make it so that those are blocked. And then you can also set up your network identification so it's private. So they have to know you're there. It's not going to broadcast on the network, like my computer 2 is now on the Starbucks network. So those are the kinds of things that you can do to minimize problems in these public networks. By themselves, people can't get into your computer unless somehow they get an address for your computer or a name for your computer and permission to get in. And so in general, it's probably not too bad, but if you're like communicating with your bank or something that's really critical, I'd make sure that I take as many of those steps as possible, because sometimes you don't have a choice. You're traveling, you're in the middle of somewhere, you don't have another way to get your Wi-Fi connection, and that's what you have to do. Oh, sorry, come back.
If you have two different like headsets, Bluetooth, that have different names, different brands or whatever, do they both pair to the same like phone and share music? If you're on a bike trip or something, you can share music, two headsets off the same thing, and pairing both headsets to
and have them both play at the same time.
Yes. I mean, but they're not the same brand, and so they come under different names. They're separate.
Well, I guess my answer is I don't know.
No, it doesn't.
I'll say so far.
Yeah, what Jim talked about was the one-to-one. So you have a phone, your phone is a transmitter, and then your headset is the receiver. You can only transmit to one receiver at a time. I can't transmit to multiple
Even though
speakers.
you can pair with a dozen different.
I can pair it, so I do have, if I look at my Bluetooth, I have about 20 Bluetooth devices that I've paired to, but I can only have one active connection at a time. So if I connect to Jim's speaker over there, I cannot play on my headphones. I cannot connect to my car. I cannot connect to my other Bluetooth devices. So it is limited, but you can have, in fact, I do have multiple Bluetooth headphones. So I just pick the one that I want to use that day. I pick it up, I put it on, I turn it on, and I connect.
But you can never have two people do it.
No, one-to-one.
There are some things happening that may help
Yes.
there. One of them is they're building Bluetooth into motorcycles.
Yeah.
And one of the reasons for that is typically if you've got somebody behind you, they've got headsets in their helmet, you've got headsets, you've got a microphone, and they're making it so that you can talk to the person behind you, but you've got to hear yourself as well.
Oh.
So that'll be like a dual system, and then put it on the handlebars, because taking your hands off the handlebar to reach up to tap something to communicate is problematic. So there are some tricks, and they might actually be doing like fast switching, so you don't hear that it's switching. I don't know how they're doing it yet, but that was one of the applications that came across. Sorry, Jim.
Well, and I was going to add, my brother has a set of speakers that that are Bluetooth that will play through stereo. So that's a device that's sending two signals somehow, and I don't know how that's happening.
But I have a little extra, like when I have my headphones on, I have a little another Bluetooth device that I can control the volume with,
Right.
So those two devices are a bit talking at the same time.
Right, and that's why, so it is switching it's probably switching to accomplish that. And because you can do that so quickly that you don't hear that pause, or it's got correction protocols, but they are working around those kind of things that I think it will get to the point where somehow, because you've got enough bandwidth, it's going to probably part of it, that they can transmit the same signal. It's really probably going to end up being duplicating signal, but it's got enough bandwidth to send that same signal twice to 2 or 3 devices, but you'll get limited.
Don't you do like keyboard and, mouse and all that and a bunch of different things like you were talking about at the same time? That's actually switching from one.
Either switching or it's got more than one Bluetooth radio.
Yeah, multitask.
Yeah, well, it does multitask in most cases, right? Because the actual typing and mouse movements don't take all that much bandwidth, so that it either multitasks.
It leaves the data.
Yep, or it has more than one actual Bluetooth device, and then they're both connecting to the bus on the computer.
But with the headphones, it can't switch between one and the other like that.
I haven't seen that yet, but I bet it's coming, because they are working on the faster data rates. And like I said, they got I've seen the stereo setup, and so it's got to be doing something like that.
Actually, when you think about it, though, the one-to-one actually is better when you think about the security of it, because you know
Yep.
you're listening to one set of headphones and somebody else is not listening to your music or seeing your pictures or whatever.
Yeah, that's true.
You know?
Well, let's do one thing. I want Jim to get to his demo, so maybe he can fire up the speaker and then walk to the back of the room.
Yeah. So, and actually what I was going to do, well, does anyone need to see the pairing? Because one of the other things I was going to demonstrate about the security is, so I'm going to turn on my Bluetooth speaker. It gives a nice little demonstration of its base capabilities there. Turn on the Bluetooth here. So it's connected already. Gave a little, I don't know if you heard that chime. And then I'll play the music. Let's see, I got it right here. Because what I'm going to demonstrate, my brother and I have done this to each other at family gatherings. So this is just a demo, all right? So we're listening to holes there. And my brother like, oh, you want to listen to this, so. I'm sorry, I didn't have the Bluetooth on here already. You can hear the interference as this one's not connecting. I just stole the signal, right? It's paired 1-to-1, but I stole it away. And my brother did that to me, or I did that to him. But let's see how far out it can go. Maybe I'll even walk out into the wall.
Is that being accomplished because of distance and range, and your brother got up closer and was able to?
No, he was the next one, and the speaker says, oh, I got somebody else asking on pay for them for the speaker.
Why did they blow you off?
It's the speaker didn't sort it out, right? I'm the favorite child. I didn't see it on here. Mike could answer.
Hey, Mike. Oh, turn the speaker down. Mute it. Mike, I got a hearing aid thing, you know, and that it will pair up also.
So you get accidental sounds?
Yeah, it's paired up with this. This is a microphone picks you up a little bit better. Nothing's perfect in this world. And I've got a couple interference issues I've had with this. I've got little Bluetooth outputs from the audio of our television set. And so I can walk around in my home, or actually out in the yard, or in the garage, and I can still hear my television. I haven't been able to see it yet, but I've been if I walk next to my microwave, you know, I'm heating up my coffee again, that'll give you a force system. It's a scratchy, normal static kind of signal. But if I get on my treadmill, which has a Bluetooth thing on it, I think for heart rate monitor, I'm not sure what the interference is, but when I'm on my treadmill, I will have a perfectly clear signal. I listen to music off my phone from the 50s. But anyway, and it'll be a perfect signal, and then it drops off completely. It's silent for 10 seconds.